my sixth 5-star read of 2024, and that is, of course, Giovanni's Room. Whoa. Whoa. I mean, can we take a moment? What a book. What a book. I went into this not realising how similar it is in its story to Call Me By Your Name. But if you took a checklist of everything that I hated about Call Me By Your Name, everything that the author did wrong, all of those things are inverted, flipped on their head, made perfect in this book. This was my introduction to James Baldwin. I am shocked that it has taken me this long because from page 1, truly the book had just started and I was like, oh, you're infectious. Like, your whole style of writing, I'm obsessed with it. This cannot be the only James Baldwin book that I read in my lifetime. This cannot be the only James Baldwin book I read this year. You know what I mean? It's one of those, like, oh, I need 15 more. Because again, not to keep busting the balls of Andre Asselman or whatever his name is, but Call Me By Your Name feels so inauthentic. The actual writing itself feels like a pastiche, as if he thinks like, oh, this is what sophisticated writing sounds like. James Baldwin just is sophistication. Like, it felt almost like a 20th century Oscar Wilde in the way that everything was so profound. Every page, the simple dialogue between characters, there was so much to unpack in every single line. You were like, wow, there's meanings under meanings, there's things in between the lines. I was like, this is what it means to write a classic, to write something that you could actually spend a whole semester in school unpacking, because there is all of this thought and care put into it. And I appreciate it. It's no secret that I like to criticize books. That's why you come here. You know I like to roast a bad book. But it is doubly fulfilling to sing the praises of a book that is just pure artistry. And I am probably twice as critical when it comes to queer fiction, only because I know personally like the long winding road of self-discovery that queer people go through. So if there is a piece of media, a piece of art that can help them along that way, you know, like in their youth especially, that means so much, because I don't know necessarily if I had that, and I wish if a book like this had come into my life sooner, would have helped me figure shit out, you know what I mean? You know what I'll say about this as well, which I can't think of any other LGBT book that does this, at least in my mind. Well, I'll have a think about it. But this book, it unapologetically portrays the rough with the smooth. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't put queer people on this, like, rose-tinted pedestal of, like, oh, aren't they the wounded party? Aren't they such martyrs? Like, oh, my bleeding heart. You know, it doesn't do any of that. Like, there are sad moments, you feel for them. But then there are also, oftentimes in this story, David and Giovanni, one of their biggest obstacles is other gay people. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, truth. Because don't assume, oh, minority, all in this together. Not always the case. Wouldn't it be lovely if there was solidarity like that between all queer people? Sadly, there isn't. This book shows a lot of the ugly sides of gay people, and I was here for it. If your representation, good representation, is balanced, okay? Show me queer people who are creepy, perverse, weird, all of that's in here, and I felt it so much more because it felt real. It was like, oh yes, Guillaume the creep, who, you know, spoiler alert, skip this bit if you've not read this book, meets a very tragic end at the hands of Giovanni. It feels great because I know people in my real life who are like Guillaume. It's like, yeah, I've seen a few of them, and it feels so almost semi-autobiographical, because I know James Baldwin had relationships with men, I believe. Like, it was, I don't think we fully know whether or not. I would love it if someone could fill me in on any books I could check out about that. Are there any sort of like James Baldwin biographies? I'd be very into that. I probably want to read some more of his books first, actually. But it does seem like he had a really interesting life, and you can tell that he lived the experiences that he's talking about, especially moving away from America to the south of France with like the shadow of his father. That all was just really, really impactful to me, because our main character David, poor boy, he's got a case of the not gays, major no homo energy. He's standing face to face with I told you so, all of the above. And Giovanni, that is his queer panic, you know, his relationship with him. But then, of course, he has Hella, this fiancée of his, who's off in Madrid on her own travels, until she then comes to the south of France, and then everything spirals. It's very fascinating. It's very much a thriller. I mean, it's quite a short book, but it's fast paced. Loved it. On top of that, David's sexuality, not only does the novel never feel the need to slap a label on it and be like, this is you, this is who you are, live with it, never defines his identity. I feel like sometimes queer literature, it makes the mistake of making that like an all-encompassing thing, as if like being gay is all there is to really know or be interested in about them. And I don't think that's fair. I think queer people have so much to offer the world, and it's all not necessarily because of or to do with the fact that they are queer. Like, yes, that's a big part of who they are and their culture, but it's also not like, what else have you got? In this story, David, there are other facets to his character. We can see that he's having this like quarter-life crisis because he's in his late 20s. He doesn't really know what he's going to do with his life. He has this sort of turbid relationship with his father, that sort of started in his youth when his father would go out and drink and his mother's no longer alive. So it managed to paint such a colourful backstory where this character feels three-dimensional. And I don't know how it did it, because the book itself is so incredibly short. I think we have one flashback scene to his childhood, and yet it tells you so much about him. Yes, there are books that are triple the length of this and waste so much time in characterization that goes nowhere. This is such a template, you know. Look at this and look at your life. Make the change, because this is art, mama. This is art.